that there's, listen, I'm sure your listeners right now are screaming at their various electronic devices that we're not naming enough Dave Matthews Band songs, but I mean.
Oh man, I want to know I'm like the correlation between Late to the Party listeners and like DMB fans. I wonder.
I bet the Venn diagram. I bet there's a sizable chunk in the middle there of people that are definitely like, why aren't you naming X, Y, and Z song right now?
It's just I couldn't name a song either. So
she doesn't even go here.
Yesterday I did Gucci, and today Fendi. So.
Hi, I'm Nikki Jensen.
And I'm Brie Piccone.
And we're Late to the Party, a weekly podcast on film, fashion, and pop culture. Yeah, so joining us today is co-creator of Fox's Sleepy Hollow and Podcast Like It's 1999 host, Phil Iscove. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Phil.
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm not gonna lie, I have been obsessed with podcasts like it's 1999 for a hot second. So
well, that is lovely to hear. I appreciate that.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, but also about your podcast?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I do a podcast with a close friend of mine and fellow TV writer Kenny Nybart. And about almost 4 years ago, we started just covering every movie and TV show and prominent album, I would say, from 1999. And it started just as us kind of just wanting to talk about movies together, and then it kind of grew into something with guests. And it's just been an absolute blast. And we have a Patreon as well, where we did the best films of 1989, and we're currently doing the best films of 2009. And you can find that at www.patreon.com/podcastlikeit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's so awesome. How did you guys choose 1999, by the way? Like, why 1999?
Yeah, I mean, we often get this question, and I wish that I had like a real answer, but the answer ultimately comes down to the fact that generationally, for Kenny and I, Kenny's a little younger than I am, but still, 99 was just such a big year. It was just this sort of, on top of it being obviously the end of the millennium and all that sort of stuff, but it just felt like we had this real moment where all of these tremendous filmmakers started their careers, or we were getting films from them in the middle or ends of their careers. It was just a real embarrassment of riches. So it just felt like a year that was worth exploring.
Yeah. Well, it's arguably like the best year of film, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what a lot of people like to coin that now.
Yeah. Yes, it does feel as though it's certainly in the running. 39 is pretty impressive, 82 is pretty impressive, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those years where you kind of do a list and you're like, you really could do a list of the best 30 or 40 films of that year, which is pretty insane. So.
Yeah, well, I'm here for it.
Same. I mean, we live in 1999 in our minds, so
yeah.
It's pretty perfect.
Well, considering that you guys are significantly younger than I, it's interesting that you guys gravitate towards that time.
Yeah, life was really good for us when we were 5.
We remember it well.
Yeah, I bet those movies really made an impression at 5.
For sure. No, I was a kid who would go to Blockbuster every weekend, and I learned how to read by the little catalog from Blockbuster. So I know every movie from 1999 to like 2002.
That's amazing. That's you're an old soul.
For sure. An old soul. Yeah. But yeah. So on this week's episode, we are going to discuss the 2017 Greta Gerwig movie, Lady Bird.
Yeah.
So.
Which I was really excited to see, Phil, like when you added this to the suggestion list, like at the top, because Nikki and I, we were literally talking about this movie, and we were like, oh, which one are we going to do with Phil? Like, he put it up there on, you know, like maybe we should go with that because we've just been like wanting to talk about it for a while now. So it was just kind of crazy. It felt like a melding of the minds.
I'm glad that you guys, that you love it as much as I do. It's such a special film, and obviously it birthed Greta as a filmmaker and really kind of, put her on the scene. Obviously, she'd been acting for a while, and obviously, her relationship with Noah Baumbach notwithstanding, it felt like a real, just a new, fresh voice that just kind of entered cinema that was just so exciting.
Definitely. I feel like Lady Bird is such a perfect movie in a lot of ways. And also she does a really good job of like just having a really strong voice, which I don't think it's very rare for like a 2017 film to just resonate so deeply, maybe. So.
Yeah, it is interesting that, obviously I know that your podcast focuses on a specific sort of time and that this film takes place in that time, was so, important to Greta based at least on the interviews that I've read in terms of her really not having any interest in exploring, present day teens, I guess is the best way to put it. And that it's obviously, autobiographical to some degree, but I do think that the fact that this movie sort of popped as much as it did in 2017, a movie that ultimately, is a character piece, a coming of age movie. Again, these are things that generally speaking don't do necessarily well at the box office. But this movie has something, I think that there's, as I was watching it again over the last 2 days, there is a Wes Anderson-y component to it. I do feel like Lady Bird's voice has a little bit of Max Fisher in her to some degree or another from Rushmore.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of that anti-establishmentarianism, this thinking that she's wiser than maybe she really is. There's a lot of that, but it's also, it's not cartoonish. It never sort of falls into any sort of semblance of, caricature.
Definitely not. Also, the stars that have like come out of this film. We were rewatching this film and we were like Timothée Chalamet, Lucas Hedges, just all like Beanie Feldstein or Feinstein.
Beanie, yeah. It's really it's a pretty magnificent movie in terms of how simple it seems. It's movies like this that, personally speaking anyway, when it comes to the stuff that I try to write from time to time, it's the ones that look really simple that are the hardest to do. When you're playing in such a specific sandbox, and you want all these characters to feel so rich and real, the bench of actors, you just mentioned a couple of them, but, obviously I'd be remiss to not talk about just these, Tracy Letts and Laurie Metcalf, who are just, titans of industry, their abilities. They're in the same theater, troupe, just staggering performances from both of them. This time around, Tracy Letts just broke my heart in this movie. Like, he's just absolutely just phenomenal.
Agreed. I think him and Laurie Metcalf, their roles, like you were saying, they're just so realistic, which is so hard to do. But they feel real and complex and nuanced and not in a way that's any way over the top. I haven't seen performances like that are so grounded in a really long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, for sure. There are moments in this film that are unbelievably funny and also just unbelievably heartbreaking. This time round, we're obviously going to jump around in the plot, I'm assuming.
Yes.
But just think, the end for a quick second about, Lady Bird getting accepted to what we assume is New York University, even though it's never said. And her dad, that brief scene in the bank when the dad's like, if I refinance the house, and with her, oh my God, why am I drawing a blank on when they pay some of your tuition? Forgive me. But he's like, then where are we? It's literally a 15-20 second moment, and it just, how far this father is willing to put himself into debt in order to give his daughter a chance is really, really beautiful.
For sure. So yeah, like we were talking about, this film is set in Greta Gerwig's hometown of Sacramento, from fall 2002.
Sacramento, yeah.
Yeah, Sacramento. Fall 2002 to fall 2003. And it was released theatrically November 3rd, 2017, and it's an A24 film. But where were you in fall 2002? I just want to say 2022.
I was graduating university. So in 2002, I went to film school in Toronto. I went to, at the time it was called Ryerson University. I think that they've changed the name of it now. I don't know what the hell it's called now, but, I went to film school there, from, 99 to 2003. So Lady Bird is a little younger than I am, obviously. So, she is, about to end her high school years and go into university. I was ending my university years. So, but yeah, I mean, this movie does a very good job of not rubbing your face in period details. I think that part of that, I imagine to some degree or another, is budgetary. But on the flip side of that, I think, that the cell phone that she has is such a weird brick flip phony thing that existed back then. The music they're listening to, the clothes that they're, I assume that you guys want to speak, more extensively than I can on the fashion of this film.
Oh,
but,
for sure.
Yeah, it feels very of the time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So did you go to some parties and there's like Crimea River in the tanning beds?
I can't say that a party with Crimea River comes to mind. That's not to say that it didn't happen. I'm sure I was at a party where that played. I definitely vividly remember Dave Matthews Band Crash being a song played incessantly at the summer camp that I went to. So I definitely that needle drop in this film really hit home.
And is that a thing? Because in this film, like, Crashin' to me plays such an important part in the story, and Lady Bird, she's kind of it's like her guilty pleasure song. Is there like lore around Crashin' to me? Like, is this one of those songs where I'm trying to think of like a modern day equivalent, but like a Justin Bieber bop or something?
I can't speak to lore because I'm not the biggest Dave Matthews Band fan. I liked that album. I think, listen, I went to a primarily Jewish summer camp, and Dave Matthews Band certainly, that is his demo in a lot of ways. So I think that certainly plays into it. I don't think that song, again, the age thing plays into it a little bit too, right? Which is, I could see that song, being a song that's a slow dance song at a dance for teenagers, right? Like, it makes total sense that would happen. It was played at dances at the summer camp that I went to. Now, I wasn't necessarily a teenager at that moment, but like, this is, so it taps into that kind of, I guess your Stairway to Heavens and your slow dance songs. But it was a big single. I mean, it was a big hit song at the time. But yeah, I don't know that there's like, I think part of it is in this film, and I can only speak obviously to my reaction to it, is, it's a little ironic. The first time that the needle drop drops, I think, certainly for my generation, it has this kind of playfulness to it, where it's feeling like it's sort of playing into the nostalgia of the moment, but then it goes back to that well, like 2 or 3 more times. So the song starts to feel more important and less winky, I think. But I don't know what you guys thought.
For sure. I mean, okay, Crash Into Me it's one of those songs where even before we rewatched Lady Bird or that we knew we were going to talk about this with you, I've literally a couple times have heard that song on the radio recently and been like, God, I hate this song. And then like halfway through the song, I'll be like in my head like, damn, this is a good song. Like the instrumental alone, it hits.
Yeah.
I like it. Dave Matthews knows what he's doing. He's got some bops, he knows what he's doing.
For sure. Well,
I don't know. I feel like it's the one and only Dave Matthews song that I probably like. I don't know.
I don't think I could name more than 3 or 4 Dave Matthews Band songs if you put a gun to my head. I feel like there's probably a couple singles that I feel like The Space Between Us was a big song. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the only other one that really comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that I'm sure your listeners right now are screaming at their various electronic devices that we're not naming enough Dave Matthews Band songs. But I mean,
oh man, I want to know I'm like the correlation between Late to the Party listeners and like DMB fans. I wonder.
I bet the Venn diagram. I bet there's a sizable chunk in the middle there of people that are definitely like, why aren't you naming X, Y, and Z song right now?
It's just I couldn't name a song either. So
same.
But yeah. But speaking about Lady Bird again, so this actually earned 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actress for Saoirse Ronan, Best Supporting Actress for Metcalf, and she lost to Allison Janney for I, Tonya. Screenplay and director. Do you remember this award season?
Yeah, I do. This was a great year. Like, this was one of those years where, like, you kind of go through the list of Best Picture nominees and periodically, there's just a really good batch of them. And it felt like, this was the year where, I feel like, Greta and Jordan Peele really sort of, popped. You know what I mean? It felt like everyone was talking about, it seemed like Jordan Peele had it in the bag for original screenplay, but there was a question as to whether or not Lady Bird might be able to eke it out. I think Get Out is brilliant, so I'm certainly not suggesting that it should be one. It's a bummer. I think that if I'm, Lady Bird leaving empty-handed certainly is disappointing considering how great a film it is. I understand why, this was the Shape of Water year, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was the year,
yeah.
right?
And like Call Me by Your Name,
That was a good one too.
Right. I understand why I guess I understand why I like Shape of Water, but I also understand people that are just like, why did we give Best Picture to a mute woman having sex with a fish man? Like, I get it. I think if I'm going to give an award to this film, I probably would have given her Frances McDormand's Best Actress award. That, I believe it's the same year, right? That's the Three Billboards year. Am I making that up?
Oh man. I think you're correct. There were so many good movies that came out of that year. So it's hard. It feels like 2017 was like 10 years as far as movies go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the year that Frances McDormand wins for Three Billboards, and Three Billboards I think it's a tricky movie. It's not my favorite movie. I think it's got a lot of really interesting ideas in it and some great performances. But and I love Frances McDormand to the end of the earth. But Saoirse Ronan not having an Oscar at this point to me seems like highway robbery. But anyway,
I feel like as far as Saoirse Ronan performances, this is the one where like Best Actress. It like this seems so fitting, but
yeah, I think. I mean, truthfully, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I think she should have probably won for Brooklyn as well. Brooklyn just slays me, and it's so because of Saoirse's Irish background, it feels like the most kind of personal, I guess, to some degree. Like, it feels like there's no doing an accent. This is just, it had such a purity to it. But, you know, Brie Larson, she played the Oscar game a little better than Saoirse, and you know, so there you go.
I do think it's crazy that because, like, when Saoirse Ronan was doing, like, press for Brooklyn, like, during, like, that's Oscar season, this is how she got introduced to Greta Gerwig and Lady Bird. Like, that role became hers. I thought that was it's like an interesting, like, there's no coincidences.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's, you know, it's so funny because in my brain, Lady Bird feels like it was before Brooklyn, but it's not, because she seems older in Brooklyn than she does. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of messes with my brain a little bit as to how that's all kind of, which speaks to, I mean, I could talk for hours about Saoirse Ronan's talents. I think she's the actress of her generation. I don't think there's anyone that can do what she does. But this movie, the way she vacillates between a misanthrope and an unbelievably open-hearted, caring person within a fraction of a second is just absolutely insane to me. I think about the scene with Lucas Hedges when he admits to her, you know, that he's trying to come out and he doesn't know how. And she is so angry and hurt and heartbroken. And then when she sees how sad he is and what he's struggling with, in seconds, she just turns and you're just like, she's just this lovely, unbelievably sweet person. It's incredible what she can do.
That scene always, like, breaks my heart a little bit because, like, to your point, it's a second. Like, she is so angry and you can kind of see it. Like, when she just drops her guard and, like, gives him the biggest hug, but it just happens so quick. It's brilliant.
Yeah, she's just, you know, we did an episode, it hasn't, I don't know when this is going to drop, so I don't know all of that, but we're about to next month, we're going to drop an episode on the Lovely Bones, which, came out in 2009. And I mean, she might be the only reason that film is even worth watching.
Not
what
Stanley
she does
Tucci?
in that film. No, not Stanley Tucci. Decidedly not Stanley Tucci.
Yeah, I totally forgot she was in Lovely Bones. I was like, where have I seen her before?
She's so good. I mean, listen, that movie is a big old mess from kind of top to bottom. But she is so unbelievably watchable. I mean, even when she's in movies that might not all come together, and there's many actors like this, but when she's always worth watching. You know, even when she has small bit parts and things. I mean, she's not in Grand Budapest a ton, but my God, she's just so great in that film. She, you know, and obviously, you know, she got an Oscar nomination when she was like, how old for Atonement?
Oh,
I mean, it's crazy. So.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy to me too. Like, Saoirse Ronan, like, she's about our age, but she just talk about an old soul, but then so young. It's so interesting. She's such an interesting person to me.
I couldn't agree more. I also think that her on and off screen relationship with Timothée Chalamet, I find also really fascinating as well. I think that they are, I mean, I'm very open about my love of Greta's Little Women, and, you know, did with Joe and Laurie in terms of, I mean, truthfully, I think there's a bit of a gender fluidity going on between the two of them. I think that there was a bunch of photo shoots that they did together around the launch of Little Women where you're just like, these two have such a fascinating, like, they clearly love each other, not romantically necessarily, but just there's something really interesting about how their talents merge on screen. I mean, he's a dick in this movie, just to be very clear. In Lady Bird, he's a straight up asshole, but somehow there's just a charm between them that's just really amazing.
I mean, for sure. Well, I'm a big Timothée Chalamet fan. But also hot
Sure,
take.
you and every other woman in America.
That's true. But hot take. I'm kind of a Kyle defender in Lady Bird.
Oh, okay. I'd like to hear that defense.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
explain, Nick.
I think he's just a 16, 17-year-old guy, to be honest. And I feel like she comes on to him and she does all this rigmarole to get to him. And he's just living his life and kind of just living by the seat of his pants. And I agree when he like looks over at her and is like, you're going to have a lot of like, what does he say? Not mediocre. But like meaningless sex in your life, just like get used to it.
You have a lot of, yeah.
He said, "Get used to it."
You know,
Tits.
I mean, just to be clear, I think he's great in this film, and I think that the role is incredibly well written. When I say that I think he's a dick in this, I think that he's a dick. Excuse me, in a very believable way, right? I mean, he feels like a 16-year-old boy who knows that he's attractive, who knows that girls want to be with him, deeply narcissistic, deeply selfish. You know, we're not supposed to like him per se, and I do think that at the end of the film, when him and Jenna are like, fuck going to the prom, that's kind of the moment when I appreciate that Lady Bird's like, no, I want to go to the prom, and she goes to the best friend, obviously, but I do think that he's not a great person.
No. I'm not saying that in the slightest. I'm just saying like I get him.
Sure, and he did also say to her that he was a virgin, despite the fact that you know he lied later saying that he didn't say it.
I know. I didn't like that. I was like, hey, that's gaslighting, I guess. Like, you can use that term. I don't know.
He's gaslight, gatekeeping, and girl bossing. But
yeah, he did all of the above. Yeah, I mean, he just it was. Listen, I think he's great. I think that that Timothée Chalamet takes a character that could be really, really unappealing and makes him charming in a way that feels very sort of approachable. And I mean, I think about like. There's a couple lines. I mean, he says "hella tight" way too many times.
Oh yeah.
But it's also just like it's weird you shake hands. Like he calls her out for stuff. I mean, him reading the history of the United States. He's a pretentious twit.
Mm-hmm.
but I still love the role.
For sure. Yeah. Well, what do you think about then? If we're talking about Kyle. What are your thoughts on Kyle, Brie?
I mean, he's cute. I get the appeal, but he's a little annoying, you know? I don't know. He's not wrong sometimes. He's like, yeah, they put tracking devices in your phone. Like, the government doesn't need to put, like, a tracking device on you. We have, like, I don't know. He was like, talking about the future, and I'm like, yeah, you know, he's kind of right.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
He's not ahead of his time when it comes to the barter system, which is apparently how he wants to live his life.
Well, yeah.
Oh, I love that line so much, though.
I love that energy. Like,
yeah. It's, you know, it's, I think this movie also, I mean, it does so many things so well, but, you know, it does feel as though I've never been a teenage girl, so I don't want to speak, you guys obviously were, so you can speak far better to this than I can. But I know that I've had several female friends whose first boyfriend turned out to be gay. And I think that that's indicative of, I think to some degree or another, artistic, creative people tend to gravitate towards other artistic, creative people. And I think that, not to speak in too broadly terms, but I do think that, you know, the Lucas Hedges character taps into that, right? So it makes sense for them to gravitate to each other. And I think that it taps into that, and then it taps into this like emo kid who's in a band. Like, all of these things make total sense for the person that Lady Bird thinks she wants to be and will ultimately end up being.
For sure. Well, I can say something about this. So I was a theater kid. I actually have my degree in theater, so I was beyond a theater kid. But in high school, so I was a theater kid, but I also was emo. So I really related to Lady Bird because, yeah, my first boyfriend, big crush, was totally gay. Or I think. I don't know. Maybe he's not, but he is. And
I mean, if he's not, you might have just outed him.
Well, I don't know. He's also a Christian. It's complicated.
Okay. Sure. Fair enough.
But, I also loved going to shows. And I was attracted to emo dudes. And, guys that were into rock music. And they were usually the bad boy. They were usually like Kyle. And so I get that. In high school, I did some dude that I had a crush on, and we kind of bonded. I remember him coming out to me, and it being very like a Lady Bird moment. So I can totally relate.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to Lucas Hedges. It's a testament, obviously, to Saoirse and to Greta as well. How delicately they handle that situation. That they make sure that it doesn't feel judgmental in any way, shape, or form. I think that it's a really special part of the film, and I think that, listen, everyone's adolescent heartaches or romances or whatever the case might be feel so dramatic in the moment, and you think that the world is ending, and I think this movie does a really good job of making it feel that way, but also making it grounded and making it feel really genuine.
For sure. What did you think? And I also thought Lucas Hedges like you said, did a great job. Like, he's also very nuanced. And this is like the first time that I was introduced to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what did you think about Kyle? Brie.
Kyle?
Yeah. Lucas Hedges' character.
I mean, Danny.
Danny.
I think it's Danny. Yeah. So
I'm so sorry. Kyle's on the brain.
So, yeah. I'm really confused.
Sorry, Danny? I love Timothy Chalamet. What can I say? He's infected my brain.
Timothy Chalamet.
Sorry about that. Danny.
Yeah, Danny. Yeah. No, I mean,
he's very dreamy,
He is. But no, I love Danny. I don't know. I mean, I thought he did a good job. I feel like I've seen Lucas Hedges in a few things, and I can't name what they are right now, but his face is familiar.
Oh, Manchester by the Sea. Oh, that came out the year before, right?
Oh, I don't know, but I think he's great.
Manchester by the Sea. He's been in a bunch of stuff. But yeah, most of it's kind of on the indie kind of lane. Here's a question for you guys, which I'm curious about.
Yeah.
I love that Saoirse didn't want to use any makeup.
Oh, yeah.
So you really see her adolescent acne and her skin and her freckles, and it adds so much to the character. It's first of all, it's sad that it's so rare. Like, you so rarely have any actors that allow themselves to have any blemishes or whatever. But it just made her feel so much more like a kid that you saw in high school. Her this sad kind of hair that she had with like split ends and this like weird, like, she dyed her hair, but it's clearly like grown out now, so it's just like kind of drooping near the edges of her. It's the intentionality of it and what it does to the character, and I imagine it speaks to the fashion and the aesthetics of it as well.
Yeah. No, I love that she decided not to wear makeup. I feel like, I don't know, it just makes it feel more grounded, I guess, and just, I don't know. I feel like that's what teenagers do. They dye their hair, they change things up all the time, and they go through angsty phases, and I don't know.
Yeah, I love that decision. mainly because Lady Bird is such an individual, but also she's still playing with her look and herself. Like, so the hair growing out, maybe that's not how she feels in the moment. I loved, like, even Lady Bird auditioning for the school play in the fall 2002 versus her, the next year going to college, and she goes by Christine, and her makeup is completely different, and she's dressed just a little more casually. Like, theater Lady Bird has a red lip, and then she just throws that all away. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, because, like, I mean, obviously not obviously, but I didn't go to a Catholic school. So, the whole idea of uniforms and all that, obviously hinders your expression as a person, right? And what you're capable of getting across to people. Yet they still find their ways. Jenna's skirt is too short, or, Lady Bird's shirt's always, like, untucked and looks, like it hasn't been washed. And there's certainly elements to that. It's not a particularly, fashion forward movie in that way. I don't, everyone's just sort of, there's a kind of, believability in how they just look like kids. They just look like real people. Like, everyone's just sort of wearing clothes that just make sense.
Definitely. And I love the little touches, though, of the early 2000s. Like, I love, like, the puka shell necklace. It's just, like, a nod.
Or, like, I think Jules has those little, like, clips that, like, her hair is in, like, I don't know what it's called, but, like, those clips where it's just, like, pushed back. And, like, the butterfly clips.
No, for sure. I think all that stuff really, really pops and works. It's funny, apropos of it's weird. Last night I watched Cha Cha Real Smooth, the new Conor Ray film that went up, and Jenna is in that, and it's the first time I've seen her since Lady Bird, and she's really good in it, but she looks the same. Like she basically just has not, and she does have a similar vibe. But yeah, she's really good in this movie. The actress who plays Jenna, forgive me, I don't know her name, was really, really, like, believable. She seemed like the popular kid. She seemed like she was self-aware enough to know what she was doing. I feel like more times than not, the popular kid in movies of this ilk, or teen movies in general, are kind of just mustache-twirling villains that are kind of there to be just sort of a and Jenna didn't feel that way.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I loved how she was, like, the popular girl, but she was totally in her, like, she was in the right. Lady Bird was lying to her, and she can't really help that she's rich. Yeah. She's just in her world, in Jenna's world. This is how things are, and it's not judged. Greta Gerwig does a good job of not judging her characters.
I absolutely agree. I feel like, even your most sort of, I mean, I don't know that, I mean, I'm trying to think of, like, I guess Meryl is evil-ish in Little Women. But even then, first of all, it's Meryl Streep, so there's always dimensions to it, but still, like, it never feels, like a villain per se. I mean, I feel like, again, Greta's only made 2 films, so it's hard to sort of speak to themes and what have you. But if you put the 2 films next to each other, I would say that, the villain ultimately is just the real world, right? Like, the world's gonna way or another. And, I think that I would argue Little Women probably has a happier ending than Lady Bird does. I think that Lady Bird ends in a pretty, ambiguous and sort of, existential way. We don't really get to see, Christine and her mom come together.
That kind of bothered me just a little bit. It's like, I felt like I wanted to see that, I'm like, you left us hanging. But I think it implies that they get closer. I guess it leaves you to imagine.
I love that.
Yeah, I think
ambiguity. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Nikki. I don't disagree. I don't know. I hear what both of you are saying in the sense that there is there's a catharsis and a satisfaction that's being withheld intentionally. So, Greta's trying to have her cake and eat it too a little bit, in the best way, which is that she wants you to, if you want to picture a happy ending, and it's there for the taking. And if you don't have to. It's funny because now that I say that out loud, she does the exact same thing in Little Women, which is that she deviates from the source material and gives you a choose your own adventure at the end of Little Women, where if you want to believe that there's some big romantic happy ending for Jo where she ends up with this guy, you can have that, I guess. But even Greta's sort of like, let's be realistic here, and tries to find a way to show that the only thing that really matters to Jo is that book. I mean, watching the book get put together at the end of Little Women, it makes me cry every time. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Well, in Little Women, for me, that's the true love for Jo, is the book at the end. So.
Absolutely. It's why when Amy burns her book, it's like murder.
Yeah. Definitely felt like it watching it. You could feel the anger for her. I'd be mad too. Yeah. No, for sure. But, it's interesting. Watching this film the other day, the opening of this film of Lady Bird and Mary and her mother listening to the end of Grapes of Wrath, and having this really moment together where they're both kind of crying at the end of this audiobook that immediately turns to anger and immediately turns to resentment as the two of them just start. And truly, like in the first, I think it's like 7 or 10 minutes, the opening of this movie encapsulates the entire film of like what they're going through, and obviously has the amazing moment when she throws herself into the car.
That's
never noticed.
Yeah. No, I always, when I talk to friends or people that talk about their relationship with their mother, I'm always like, oh, it's like Lady Bird. I feel like this is the most realistic relationship of a mother-daughter on screen I've ever seen.
Which was one of the working titles too, I think, right? Greta Gerwig originally was going to call it Mothers and Daughters. So
yeah, I mean, even when she's pressed on why Catherine chose Lady Bird, she doesn't really have an answer for it, which is interesting. I mean, everyone assumes it's Roosevelt's wife, in which it's not. But it is interesting how, I guess just things, I mean, I can speak, I'll say for myself, weirdly, you kind of, things just stick in your brain, and you just sort of are like, this just feels right. I can't give you a reason as to why it does.
I get it because I have an alter ego.
Oh, Brie, you have an alter ego. Sorry.
Oh.
Tony Piccone. She has her life together. I don't know. I get it. I don't know where the name came from. It just came to me one day. So, I don't know.
Listen, you do you. Whatever works for you. I mean, that's,
Yeah. I get Lady Bird's, wanting to give herself the name. Like I love that scene where they're like, oh, who gave you this name? Because it's in quotes. And she's like, I did. I gave it to myself. I'm like, yeah, rock on.
The moment when Jenna, it's like midway through the film, and Jenna's like, what's your name? She's like, Lady Bird. Weird. And then just turns around. She's not wrong. It is strange. I also love her fucking weird ass posters for student council.
Yes.
Those are great.
Just these these ladies with bird. It's fantastic.
It's very what was that? Oh my god. It was on Nick in the 90s. It was I think it was a part of Kablam, but it was the girl, like in the black and white with the bangs. And like the animation, I forget what it is. Is
Daria?
Like, no, is it like Angela Anaconda or something very...
okay.
Yeah, anyways, it really reminds me of that. Yeah, it's called Angela Anaconda. And who's on like Kablam.
Yeah, it actually to me looked like, you know, there was that moment when, do you remember Jesus Raptors? Does this mean anything to you guys?
Mm-mm.
Jesus Raptors.
Okay. There was like this moment in like, I want to say the mid 2000s where there was just a lot of memes where people were putting raptor heads on pictures of Jesus. So it was like, he looked like a raptor. It just feels like it was these weird Photoshop-y things that she was doing with these birds on these lady heads. But it's bizarre. It's wonderful and bizarre.
Well, and now I know what I'm going to be looking up later.
Yeah. Jesus Raptors? I swear, if you type that into Google, you'll get a million photos. It is pretty great, actually. But there's so many lines in this that I love, but when she meets Danny in the grocery store, and he says, you live in the neighborhood, and she says, I'm from the wrong side of the tracks.
Oh, yeah.
No, it is true, but there's just something, she's concocted this, like, persona for herself that I think is a defense mechanism, but still very funny.
Yeah. Which is very Wes Anderson, too.
Yes, for sure.
In another universe, Jason Schwartzman is the one who's, like, buying a Playgirl and smoking outside of the convenience store.
100%, for sure. There's, which apparently was Greta's favorite scene to shoot, which is interesting. But, there's something very acerbic and very sort of, I think we all love a precocious teenager or someone acting, you know, above their, intellectual station or maturity or what have you. I think that Greta finds the perfect amount of it in this film. But yeah, there's definitely some Max Fisher there for sure.
For sure.
So, Phil, I have a question for you. So,
Please.
Greta Gerwig, like this film has been described as like semi-autobiographical, and I mean, she said that nothing in the movie literally happened, but it like has a core truth that resonates with what she knows. So, like, you're a writer, and I'm just wondering, have you ever used like any autobiographical material in your work, or do you find like you pull more from fantasy, or like how does that go into like the process of writing?
That's a very good question. I think that all writers, whether they're cognizant of it or not, are pulling from their experiences, right? The even if you're building some crazy fantastical world, when you really get down to the characters and their motivations and their desires and what, you know, really just what makes them tick, you're thinking about people you've met, or you're thinking about people you'd like to meet, or you're thinking about relationships that you've had. I mean, I think that for myself personally, I don't think that I've sat down to write anything autobiographical yet. There are stories and relationships that I do hope to explore in future projects. I certainly think that whenever I pitch anything, I always start the pitch from a place of what made me spark to this idea, and why do I mean, for instance, there's a project that I'm working on right now that is about this goth coroner in her 20s, and when I was in high school, I looked at those goth kids and was like, I wish I had the confidence to be those goth kids. Like, they were so fucking cool to me. I was just like, look at you just letting your freak flag fly and just like being, and listen, who the fuck knows why they did it. There's any number of, you know, reasons for it. So that was kind of the inciting thing for me, was like being that kid in high school and looking at those kids and being like, you fucking go for it, man. Like, I think that's, so again, it's an emotion, and it starts from a place of your own experiences, I think, to some degree. And I think that, with this film in particular, and listening to Greta in her interviews, this obviously has a lot of, she was never Lady Bird, but I think there were ladybirds in her life, or ones that she observed and wanted to kind of, create a character from those experiences.
Definitely. So, yeah. So, I'm curious now, though, Phil. So, you wanted to be a goth kid in high school, or you admired them. What kind of kid were you in high school?
What kind of kid was I? I mean, I was, I always loved film and television and pop culture, so I was always kind of gravitating to that type of stuff. So, I don't think that I was like a full-on nerd or geeky in that way. I don't think that I ever sort of tipped into the place of people sort of, assigning certain, fan bases to me or anything like that. I mean, I'm in high school from, to date myself here, from 1996, I guess, to 1998, or 99. So the mid to late 90s. And, it was, the stuff that was, obviously you guys maybe know better than anybody in terms of what was popular around that time. So I certainly gravitated towards popular things. I don't think that I was ever swimming against the stream, as there were a lot of kids in high school that I'm sure you knew that went out of their way to do that. The reason that I think the reason I wanted to be a goth kid, which I think is perhaps the question behind the question here, is I just, I continue to love, but I love Tim Burton. I think that Lydia Deetz was probably one of my first crushes. So I think I looked at that and was just like, I mean, Lydia Deetz, if she existed, would have wanted nothing to do with me in high school. Let's put it that way. So I think that, part of it is that. Part of it is just that gothic aesthetic, the music, the whole thing. I found myself I listened to all of it, but I never was able to wear it as a badge of honor.
Gotcha. Oh. Well, that was the time to be a goth too. I love good platforms and a trench coat.
Yeah. Is anyone even goth anymore? I mean,
right? I mean, yeah, it is weird how the goth thing has sort of been swallowed a little bit by the emo thing. Like, they really are two very different things. I was actually hanging out with a group of friends recently, and they went to an quote unquote emo party where everybody had to dress emo. So they all kind of looked, Fall Out Boy or My Chemical Romance or what have you. But that's a different animal than your Smiths and your Cure and your dark eye, really dark eyeliner and white cake makeup and piercings and, stuff, collars and shit like that. It's a different thing.
For sure. Not to digress too much though, but even emo, I remember when emo was Seth Cohen from the OC and Dashboard Confessional, and then all of a sudden it was Fall Out Boy and scene culture. So
yeah, I feel like after Scene, it was goth was nowhere to be seen. Then yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, it is interesting how listen, every single subculture is someone tries to commodify it and turn it into something popular. I mean, when I was growing up, the grunge movement was exactly that, right? I mean, that was this moment when at the second it got commodified, it all went to shit, right? But in the beginning, there is something very sort of emotional about it. People are gravitating towards these confessional lyrics, these people that are really, listen, we've all been teenagers, and as I said earlier, we all think that we're going through the worst thing that's ever happened to anybody. To hear somebody put those into lyrics and to make that personified in some way is incredibly cathartic.
For sure. I mean, well, to your point, I am wearing a whole shirt from Urban Outfitters that I got for way too much money.
That's pretty awesome.
I feel like you still dabble in that emo lifestyle a bit, Nick.
For
with
sure.
Your band tees.
Yes.
Aw.
But yeah.
I mean, Hole was a great band. I mean, and you should represent them, whoever you see fit.
For sure. But yeah. Brie, do you want to talk about the reviews for Lady Bird?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about the reviews. So, A.O. Scott of the New York Times described Lady Bird as big screen perfection, exceptionally well written, full of wordplay and lively argument. Every line sounds like something that a person might actually say, which means that the movie is exceptionally well acted. Which I agree, because it really does feel like almost unscripted, like, I don't know, just the way we see Lady Bird get mad at her mom, and like,
yeah,
I don't know, just...
I feel like A.O. Scott, like, we said exactly what he said. Like, I just feel like we're just all in agreement,
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, this movie was critically acclaimed because I think that, not only are there not as many coming-of-age films as we would like, the really, really good ones are in rarefied air. And I think that, a female writer-director trying to really tap into the female experience at a very specific time, is worth, everyone jumping up and down about, understandably so. And it was also just it was a moment of a fresh new voice landing in cinema.
Yeah. For sure. That's a good point, because, well, there's not a lot of female directors in general, or there's not a lot of, like, popular ones. Yeah. And a lot of them are, like, the Catherine Bigelows, who, it's, like, a very male-centric topics, a lot of her films. Or, like, a Sofia Coppola, who deals with, like, the teenage girl experience, but, like, in a different way. Greta Gerwig, this is, like, a straight-up coming-of-age film. Just like a not a John Hughes film, but it just feels a lot more accessible.
Absolutely. I mean, I adore Sofia Coppola. I think she's a genius, and I've been rewatching a lot of her films recently just because I wanted to, and just reappraising some of the ones that maybe didn't work for me as well when they came out. And every single one of her films just gets better and better with age. You find yourself watching them being like, oh, right, I just totally didn't get this when it came out. She is playing in a completely different sandbox. I mean, in the sense that, Sofia Coppola is making tone poems. Sofia Coppola is trying to sort of put you in a headspace. They're very sort of, in a lot of ways, I don't know if you guys have seen many of Wong Kar-wai's films, but he's another filmmaker who very much exists in this, and this is going to sound negative, but I don't mean it to, plotlessness. Mm-hmm. Sofia Coppola is just not interested in plot. It's just not all that interesting to her, and more power to her for it. But I think that Greta, is she's also very, very funny. I think that Greta understands how to make a funny movie and how to make the sort of human experience funny. Sofia Coppola's not really interested in doing that.
No, not at all. I've also been rewatching Sofia Coppola films. Right now I just watched The Bling Ring, so I've done them in order from Lick the Star, and then I'm gonna do it until On the Rocks. Mm-hmm. And yeah, sure. It's just, yeah, you're right about the different sandbox, because Sofia Coppola lives in her own world, and Greta Gerwig is in this world.
Yeah.
For sure. Listen, this industry desperately needs more, not just diverse voices, but more female voices, more female filmmakers. And I think that unfortunately the barometer of success tends to be, money, right? It tends to be financial. It tends to be, how successful are your films? And it's a metric that isn't particularly fair, but it's one that tends to be the case. And this movie was a big fat hit. Little Women, was also quite successful. I think that, listen, we've had a lot of Little Women, so I understand that maybe this Little Woman didn't set the world on fire, so everyone thought it was a quote unquote disappointment, but I think it's my favorite adaptation for
Yeah.
its work. But.
It's the only one I've actually seen, and I really enjoyed it, so I'd have to watch the others to compare.
I've seen that, like the Greta Gerwig Little Women, and I've seen the Winona Ryder Christian Bale. I love both of them, but yeah, I Greta Gerwig has an interesting voice, and I can't wait until Barbie, to be honest.
It's gonna be so interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't know what. I am very excited for Barbie because, as I think we all are on this podcast, I can't wait to see what Greta does. I think that if this Barbie movie is what it has the potential to be, it really could put her into a whole new stratosphere in terms of what she's capable of doing. And I just don't know what the hell it is. Like, everyone's in it. It's very pink. That's kind of all I know.
Is it going to be, like, in the real world? Like, is it going to be a really realistic portrayal of Barbie?
How do you do that?
I just don't know, because the posters make it look very, like, they're doll-like. Like, it's Ryan Gosling as Ken, right? And he's, like, I don't know, he looks kind of stiff in the poster. But I'm like, are they going to be actual dolls? Or are they, like, do they come to life? Is it going to be, like, life-size? Like,
ooh.
I don't know.
Sorry, life-size. I just hear life-size and I get...
No one knows. It seems at this point. I'm sure there are people that have read the script. I'm sure someone knows. Obviously, there are people that know. Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig deciding to write a script together about Barbie sounds fascinating. I'm there for it. I'm going to be there opening weekend. Probably going to see that before I see
Oppenheimer
movie. Yeah. I'm more curious about Barbie because I have no idea what that is. I know what Oppenheimer is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say with Nolan, but I'm confident I know what Oppenheimer's going to feel like at this point.
Yeah. It seems like Mad Libs or something out of a fever dream that Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig are making a Barbie film, but I love it.
I do too. I mean, I really hope that it's as idiosyncratic and specific to their voices as it can be, and that it's not just them trying to get paid. And I know that sounds maybe harsher than it should, but yeah. Are you
a fan of that, like, mumblecore genre, or like a Noah Baumbach film?
You know, I don't mean to, this is going to sound more contrarian than it should, but I don't know that I would necessarily associate Noah Baumbach with mumblecore. I do like both of those things. Like, I think that, you know, the mumblecore movement coming out of the oh my God, the brothers. I'm just losing all the names today.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, though.
The Duplass brothers. Yeah. I mean, that's where mumblecore starts, with these, like, micro budget movies. And I love the Duplass brothers. I think they're brilliant. I think Baumbach's probably closer to, and, you know, he probably shouldn't be named, but he's probably closer to Woody Allen than he is a mumblecore. I think Noah Baumbach can be hit or miss for me. I think Marriage Story is my favorite film of his. I think it's a beautiful film. I think he's made some really wonderful films. I'm genuinely curious to see how Greta and his career continue, right? Because, like, Marriage Story is the same year as Lady Bird.
Mm-hmm.
No.
No.
Sorry, my apologies. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Same year as Little Women. Yeah.
Also, not to be contrarian.
But you know what I mean? Like, their careers feel like they're on parallel tracks in an interesting way, which I think is fascinating.
Definitely. I'm interested to see both of, like, what they do after Barbie. Yeah. How do you go from Barbie?
Well, he's doing like $150 million adaptation of the Don DeLeo book White Noise for Netflix, which is coming out later this year. So that feels like maybe one of the last auteur big budget things that Netflix is going to do, it seems. So I'm very curious about that. It stars Greta Gerwig and Adam Driver, so I'm very curious to see what it ends up being. But Yeah, I mean, Barbie, man. Barbie could be fucking anything. The fact that Aqua's song isn't in it, though, I do find, just wrong.
Agreed.
Yeah, Barbie Girl definitely needs to be like the opening number in the credits somewhere.
Yeah.
Or just throughout.
Yeah.
I think Aqua should do the whole soundtrack, to be honest.
Greta Gerwig could write a letter to Aqua and be like, you know, like she wrote those letters.
To Justin Timberlake and Alanis Morissette. Just write to Aqua.
Make it happen, Greta.
But do you know, here's the thing that I read, which is that the reason it's not in the movie is not because Greta didn't want it in the movie. It's because Mattel got into a lawsuit with Aqua when the song came out, and they were just like, this song cannot be in the fucking movie. So that's a bummer.
That is.
My guess is Greta would put the song in there. That's my guess.
You have to. Or like a indie cover.
Yeah, I was thinking like maybe
Girl.
like you can switch up the lyrics or something. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Make it PG? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or like Grimes does Barbie Girl. No.
Would definitely listen to that. Would definitely listen to that.
Oh, any more thoughts on Lady Bird?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
I mean, truly, I'm just looking at my notes, but like, I'll just say this, because it's worth. There's two quick things that I wanted to talk about.
For sure.
I guess three. The first is I love Shelly. Shelly's like kind of got a goth vibe, which I'm all about. The girlfriend to her brother is just really great. She doesn't have a ton of lines. She's got one really beautiful scene outside with the clove cigarettes where she talks about how great Christine's mom has been to her. And it's those little moments that are sort of that percolate this movie, that make this movie so special, that I just wanted to highlight that. And then I also it needs to be said, I think that Allison Janney is a phenomenal actress. I adore her. But the fact that Laurie Metcalf did not win an Academy Award simply for the scene driving to the airport alone, where no words, just everything is all over her face, this entire relationship, the roller coaster she goes through just on her face over the course of, I want to say 30 seconds to a minute, is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I just adore it.
Yeah, I also agree. Like, it gets me in the feels every time. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
This movie always gets me. Like, I feel like when I watched it this time, it felt like I was watching it again, like, for the first time. Like, it invoked the same feelings for me. Like, I don't know, it just has a way of tapping into those, like, emotions, those, like, teenage emotions, and just, I don't know. But you see all these characters go through their own things, and you just feel for them. Because the actors, they do such a great job.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it from Lady Bird's perspective, like the teen's perspective, but also from the mother's. And, like, my heart, like, breaks with her when she makes the decision that she's going to go inside the airport, and she doesn't make it in time.
And then just, Tracy Letts just saying she'll be back, don't worry, she'll be back. It's just, I mean, it's incredible. As I mentioned earlier, this project that I'm working on with this goth character, is about her estranged mother comes back to town after 20 years, and they have to sort of figure out their relationship and work together to essentially fight evil. But that's neither here nor there. But this relationship between Lady Bird and her mother was very much a touchstone for me as I was writing my script, because I think that this movie creates this sort of, the tension that exists between them feels so real. Yeah. The love that they have for each other feels so real, and that inability to be able to tap into it. I mean, I think we've all had relationships with people, parents or whoever, or siblings, where, like, there is a blood, connection that you have with this person, and you love them, and yet they drive you fucking crazy. It happens to me more times than not. When I'm on the phone with my mother, I'm just like, you're driving me mental. And then I hang up the phone, call her back like 10 minutes later and apologize for not being receptive to what she's saying. But, like, the scene that I think exemplifies this in so many ways is the scene at the thrift shop
Yes.
when she's got the dress on and she's like, but do you like me? And her mom's like, I want you to be the best version of yourself. And then Lady Bird says, but what if this is the best version? And then they just sit in silence. And it's just like, but do you like me is such a, heartbreaking thing to have to ask your parent. It's just that the power of those scenes in this movie is what makes it, I think, just an absolutely brilliant, perfect movie.
Yeah, I feel like Greta Gerwig's tapping into something with those little moments between the mother and daughter, because I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations like that with my mother, or like just like at the end when she calls her mom and is like, "Thank you." It's like just these little moments. I just think it's really smart and it's special. But.
No, absolutely. I think that, it's something that, I think that, this movie has a bunch of thesis statements, I think, but one of them is about, acknowledging what your parents do for you and how much of themselves that they put on the line for you. And, the curse and the blessing of this species is that that youth is wasted on the young, and that we all think that we're the smartest people in the world when we're 17 or 18 years old, and your parents are just holding on for dear life and hoping that you'll turn out to be a great person. I think about this. I think about the line when the dad says when Timothy honks from outside the house when he's picking up for the prom and says, "You're not going to get in the car with a guy who honks, are you?" Like, these are the things where you're just like, these parents are so real and so fragile and so just phenomenally well written and phenomenally well acted. It just it's easy for you to get lost in a film like this and think it's called Lady Bird, it's all about her, and I think that the parents deserve as much credit as anybody in this film.
Tracy Letts' line read when he says, "Are you gonna go with a guy that honks?" It's such a good line read. It's just, it's not like over the top. Like, I think I've heard that line before in movies, but just the way he says it,
he's like really understated, but it like has so much, like his words have a lot of power. Just the way he,
like the disappointment, to like, oh, this is who you're gonna be. It's like a deflated.
Totally, and then for her response to be, I think so. Like, it's there's something kind of there's a shame involved in it to some degree for her, where she's like, I guess I'm doing this, and then for the subsequent scene for her to come to the realization that she doesn't want to be with these fucking assholes and that she wants to go to her prom after all. But this is all just to say that, I'm going to state the obvious very quickly and just say that, obviously movies and television are a group effort. It takes hundreds of people to make these things. And when you watch a film like this, where it's all clicking and all of those things are in such perfect harmony with one another, it's just so special, right? Like, it takes a person to write that line. It takes another person to deliver that line perfectly. It takes another person to light that scene perfectly in order to make sure to compose that shot perfectly. Like, all of these things have to click in order for the whole thing to work. And this is just one of those examples where, and also, to be said, this movie is a tight 90 minutes. I miss fucking 90-minute movies.
Yes.
I don't know why every movie needs to be so long. So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I get too antsy. I can't sit through Endgame levels for like a lot of movies.
Sure. No, it's true. I've been talking a lot with my friends recently about, because of the situation, theaters going out of business, you have to go and see movies at certain chains. And now it's like, I guess I'm going to see a bunch of movies at AMC and show up 25 to 30 minutes late because I refuse to sit for a half an hour of fucking trailers before I watch a movie. But yeah, I mean, it's the experience gets bloated. And I think that, as you just said, Nikki, it hurts the movie. Like, I think that filmmakers think, I want it all. I want to put every thought, everything I have. And, sometimes you can do it in 90 minutes and you're better off for it.
Well, it's all in the edit, right? You have to like edit and go back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on Scorsese's films? Because they tend to be pretty long. Like, can you sit through any of those?
I just to be clear, I'm not against long movies necessarily when they're deemed appropriate, right? Like, I'll be perfectly honest. I was bored to tears sitting in The Irishman. I saw it in the theater. It was a fucking long slog, man. Like, that movie was long. And to me, I understand that was intentional and that the pacing of it was entirely what Scorsese wanted to do, and more power to him. Let him do whatever he wants to do. It's just not always the most enjoyable experience, right? Sometimes filmmakers aren't making films to entertain so much as some sort of art piece. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, but it might not be fun.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I'd rather sit through Scorsese, though. No offense. Than, like, a random, like, Marvel movie.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I'm Team Scorsese on the Marvel, but that's either here nor there.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, listen, I think that when a film necessarily needs to be long in order to tell the story that it wants to tell, or to convey the feeling that it wants to convey, Drive My Car is another example. The film that came out last year, a beautiful film, a 3-hour movie, based on a short story that I think was 15 pages long, turns into a 3-hour film. Beautiful meditation on grief and sadness and heartbreak and all these things. And it works perfectly. I don't necessarily have a problem with a long movie, but I think that we've lost sight of your camera's just so we've lost sight of the benefits of a sharply told movie.
Definitely. Well, Lady Bird is perfect. It's the right minutes. Yeah. Bada boom, bada bang, you're in. You're
perfect
out.
Movie.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. So I have a question for you guys as we wrap this up.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, what are your feelings on the fashion of this movie and on the aesthetics of this movie, which is ultimately what your podcast is about?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it was pretty, I don't know, like, the fashion was pretty subtle. Except for, like, certain moments, like Lady Bird's prom dress, or, like, when she does, like, auditions for the play, like, she's kind of, I don't know, has, like, like, some type of sweater dress that looks kind of 90s to me, and I don't know, I'm trying to think what stood out to me, like,
Did her prom dress stick out for you?
Her prom dress definitely stood out. I mean, I felt like it was, like, tacky in the best way, you know? Like, I feel like kids nowadays wear a lot more, like they wear dresses to prom that look like something from a red carpet or something, and this looks like kind of a little bit dated now, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah, I liked her prom dress, for sure. I also liked how it kind of plays within. Sometimes you'll see these, like, lower middle class characters, but they have, like, a baller dress on. And you're like, They're able to shop and get this designer, you know, like, Jeremy Scott dress? Like, what? I like how this just is very grounded in the fashion. And like we were saying before, how her hair, it's colored to express herself, but it's grown out. I also loved the color palette with the blues and the greens, and I heard somewhere that it's kind of it's like a nod to the rivers in Sacramento, and they like the film the way cool. It's like a memory, so it's filmed like a memory. So I thought that was cool.
It's interesting you say that, because I feel like the thrift shop speaks to that as well, right? I mean, all of those are hand-me-downs or things that people have sold, and they're all kind of vintage clothing. I think that thematically that speaks to that too. I mean, when you think of all the memories of the people that are wearing all these clothes and all the experiences they've been through with these clothes, I think that feels emblematic of the film as well.
For sure. It was so grounded stuff. I think it's a good thing that we're kind of just like, okay, the fashion was there, because from my memories, albeit like kind of limited, of 2002, 2003. I saw a lot of horizontal stripes, some flared,
True.
like boot cuts, and, you know, day to day it wasn't this Y2K aesthetic that we know right now.
No. I feel like that was a little bit later, though, in the, like, 2004, 2005, like, I don't know, I feel like it picked up.
It was, like, really gaudy at the turn of the millennium, and really gaudy in, like, the mid, and, like, that in-between. I just liked how they portrayed it really realistic. Also, if they don't have a lot of money, is Lady Bird... Oh, also, she's,
yeah,
like...
I mean,
yeah.
No, for sure. I think that, you know, you look at the, like, Jenna's party feels like the only real opportunity to show, like, the kids getting, quote unquote, like, dressed up or trying to look cool or whatever. And even then, it's sort of, it kind of flies by. You spend most of that party outside by the pool with Kyle and Lady Bird anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Uh-huh.
I did like the goth girls look, though. Shelley? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, you want to have me back to talk about a goth movie, you let me know, because I'm in to talk about, you know, I don't know, crap, whatever you want. You know?
The craft.
Keep that in mind.
Oh, so good. Well, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for talking with us, Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Phil.
It was my absolute pleasure. I had a blast. Thank you guys for having me.
Great. Well, is there anything you want to plug or say?
No, just I check out podcasts like this 1999. That's anywhere that you listen to podcasts, or check out our Patreon at www.patreon.com/podcast-like-it. But yeah, I mean, this was an absolute blast. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to write into the show with any questions or concerns or a movie club suggestion, hit us up at thelatetothepartypod@gmail.com. And again, thanks for listening. Bye!